Welcome back to Bible Shorts, episode 92. The Book of Esther, part 1. Well, today's story is from a book of the Bible that's not history, not prophecy, not poems like Psalms, but a tale, a story about a beautiful Jewish girl who saves her people from destruction, set in the royal palace of a Persian king. Now, the ruler of the empire of the Medes and Persians was an immensely wealthy and powerful king. He ruled over an empire which stretched over 127 provinces from Ethiopia to India. Living in his empire were many Jews. In the 3rd year of the king's reign, he decided to hold a 7-day banquet. As the men got drunk, the king summoned his wife to appear in her royal dress. The king wanted to show off her beauty, but the queen refused to attend. The king was furious. His men advised him, saying, "The queen has not only insulted you, but everyone. She has set a bad example in not showing honor to her husband." The queen's title and estate were taken away from her. Who will replace Vashti as queen? A search took place throughout the land for the most beautiful young women to be brought to the palace, under the supervision of one of the king's servants. Now in the capital city of Susa, there was a Jew called Mordecai, who had an official position in the palace. Mordecai had a cousin named Esther, whom he had brought up because her parents had died. Esther was a beautiful young girl and was chosen to join the other contestants at the palace. Mordecai advised her not to tell anyone she was a Jew. Finally, out of all the many women, Esther was the one the king chose, and she was crowned as queen instead of Vashti. A feast was given in her honor, and she went to live in the king's palace. But she told no one she was a Jew, not even the king, just as Mordecai had advised. One day Mordecai overheard 2 of the king's servants plotting to assassinate the king. Mordecai went to Queen Esther, and she warned the king. The plot was discovered, and the 2 men were arrested. Mordecai's action was recorded in the official palace records. Sometime later, the king appointed a new prime minister, a man called Haman. The king promoted Haman above all the other princes to be second most powerful man in the kingdom. Now all the servants working at the king's gate would bow to Haman when he entered. However, Mordecai would not bow before Haman or show him reverence. Although excavations have been carried out at Susa since the mid-1800s, archaeologists only discovered the King's Gate in 1970. The gate was set at the edge of a moat that separated the palace complex from the royal city. A bridge across the moat ended at this gate, thus ensuring that it controlled access to the entire palace complex. The gate was massive. The size of the column bases in the center indicate the gate probably stood between 30 and 50 feet high. Biblical scholars agree that Mordecai was not just hanging out at the gate to the royal palace, but the text indicates he did have some sort of official position there. Exactly what that was is never stated. Well, he could have been working as one of the armed guards or as one of the court officials who controlled access to the palace, or perhaps even as a judge who listened to the various grievances brought by people. Now Haman was furious that Mordecai would not bow before him or show him reverence. "I'll speak to the king about this," said an angry Haman. Haman schemed to find a way to punish not only Mordecai, but his people, the Jews, also. Haman told the king, "There is a certain people dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom who keep themselves separate. Their customs are different from those of all other people, and they do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them." "If it pleases the king," Haman said, "let a decree be issued to destroy them, and I will give 10,000 talents of silver to the king's administrators for the royal treasury." The king took his signet ring from his finger and gave it to Haman. "Keep the money," the king said to Haman, "and do with the people as you please." And in the 12th year of the king, in the first month, the month of Nisan, a lot, a pur, was cast in the presence of Haman to select a day and month for his vengeance. And the lot fell on a day in the month of Adar, roughly corresponding to our month of March. The king's scribes were instructed to write a law that on a day in the month of Adar, the Jews were to be attacked and killed, and their possessions taken as plunder. The law was sealed with the king's signet ring. Now, the Bible text says a law of the Medes and Persians could not be changed or altered. And the new law was announced throughout the empire. Couriers went out spurred on by the king's command, and the edict was issued in the citadel of Susa. The king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa was bewildered. Why was this happening? When the Jews heard the law of the Medes and Persians would have them killed in Adar, they started weeping and wailing. When Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. But he went only as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. When Esther's attendants came and told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him to put on instead of sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther summoned one of the king's servants assigned to attend her and ordered him to find out what was troubling Mordecai and why. So he went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money that Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. He gave him a copy of the text of the edict to show to Esther and explain it to her, and he told him to instruct her to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Esther sent a message back to Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people in his provinces know that for a man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, there is one penalty: death, unless by pointing his golden scepter towards him, the king grants his life. And I have not been summoned before the king for the last 30 days. Mordecai answered, saying, Do not suppose that you will escape. No, if you persist in remaining silent at such a time, relief and deliverance will come from another place. But you and the house of your father will perish. who knows? Perhaps you have come to the throne for just such a time as this. Esther sent back her message to Mordecai. Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. Look for Bible Shorts, episode 93, Esther, part 2.